Well, lads, it is that time. We are on the final class tier list. I mean, we could drag this out to be rulers, Avengers, and everything, but let's just keep it simple and stick with the extra class. And as you can see, like last year, it is the last one for a year before, we update this at the end of 2024 with new buffs, with new units coming out. Because if you don't know the gimmick, what we're doing is we're looking at these units as of the end of 2023 over on NA, because I do like to update these every single year and see how the meta kind of shifts. And lastly is the extra class. I like to kind of just cram it all together because really I can't be bothered, dragging things out, being like, well, here's the ruler one and here's the Avenger one. I know that's technically better for like YouTuber wise, is to drag things out, but I can't be bothered. I have other videos I want to make, right? I want to get back to doing Arc Knight stuff. I would like to start covering more relevant news stuff, but it will not sit with me if I do not finish the tier list, right? I need to do this. It's just something I like to do, and a lot of people like to see me just ramble on about like why I think these units are where, and then all that good stuff. So let's just start diving right into this, starting off with our shielders, because as you can see, I organized them very, very nicely by their classes. And honestly, at this point, I probably should have put both mashes on here, but functionally, I think you can get kind of the same value out of both of them. I am going to be slotting mash into our first C+ option. I do think there are still really good uses for her, especially because she's free. Like, you can't go wrong with just bringing a free servant to a battle, but she's just not, I don't want to say not as impactful, but you're either A, bringing the Ortanius one, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, you're either bringing that one for the double taunt to just kind of buy yourself 2 turns, which is very valuable, right? On top of also having, like, say, a Leonidas and a George, or you're bringing the first one for just a little bit of defensive utility, a targetable 20% battery, she still has the taunt, and she gives you an invul. And her NP is still very good in giving you a decent attack buff and a decent like defense and damage cut thing, but I never really find myself ever getting to Mash's NP anymore, because realistically, I will stick her in the back, maybe give her a star bomb CE, so when she comes in, she bombs some stars, but she's really not supposed to be there for very long. And I think that's still useful, but if there were other zero cost units, you would probably bring them over Mash at this point. That's probably just the fact of the matter of things, but I still think she's solid. I don't think she's like so bad that she's like D tier gutter garbage, and she's gonna keep getting buffs. I would assume by the end of Ordeal Call, or even Ordeal Call and then moving into the end of part 2, that we could see her get maybe 1 to 2 more buffs over this span. And so, Mash is one of those units that will always probably remain semi-relevant. But I guess in kind of the same spirit as Mash, you have Jean over here. Now, Jean, I think, is a very phenomenal unit if you want to bring her to Challenge Quest. Being able to debuff clans, give everybody invincibility, healing. Now she's lowering defense to support your damage. She gens a couple of stars, right? She can also stun enemy servants and lower their NP damage to make you a little bit tankier. I just think in general, she's a very solid defensive support, with the caveat that you do probably want to go for higher NP copies, because that 5% defensive buff at NP1 is absolutely not it. In fact, just because of that, actually, because you need the caveat of getting her to higher NPs, I think I am going to bump her down to C+, because they're both defensive supports. I think Jean might do a bit better of a job, but Mash being zero cost and also having the double taunt in her Lost Belt outfit, I think is a bit useful. I actually just had to remember, I was like, no, she only gets up to like 25% defense at NP5, and that's a lot of investment that you could have put into, any of these other servants over here. Speaking of, yeah, I definitely think Amakusa is just a solid B tier unit. I know his buffs and his skills and everything read really insane if you look at them on paper. You would say this guy is clearly like an A+ tier unit, but the more and more I use him, the thing that I'm finding that I really dislike about Amakusa is his actual damage. He does seem to be more tailored to, challenge quests and stuff, having not only a battery, but also the ability to refund his NP every single turn, and he has an NP gain buff, right? Like, he has every type of NP on lock, right? Like, he makes stars, he is like lowering their defenses while buffing his own attack, he's removing all of their buffs and everything. He's doing very good things. It's just, I kind of want to see him get a power mod or something to kind of push him into a niche, because he's doing really good damage if you bring him against Moon Cancers and Berserkers, but how often do you fight moon cancers? Like, almost never. And then berserkers, I mean, sure, you could use them there, but then you're sacrificing the greatest asset of the ruler class, and that is being really tanky into everything just so you could be super effective against a berserker. You might as well just bring a better unit that is more tailored to fighting the situation, right? Like somebody with the power model, or someone that interacts really well with the gimmick of the boss fight. So Amakusa is definitely solid, but you'll probably replace him with a better Buster AoE whenever you get one. Martha, I've actually warmed up to Martha a little bit more. I think especially talking about like Sei and Nobu yesterday in the Berserker video kind of warmed me up to the idea that while I do think Summer Martha is not built the greatest, she at least has the bare essentials to be useful. Having 3 power mods, especially for, say, a less built-up box, kind of changed my perspective on that one, where, you know, I didn't think of Summer Martha as being very good, but I always just have better options. But I thought about the people that don't have better options and why they value her so high, and I'm like, yeah, you know, having somebody that can just beat up, like, Undead or Divinity is pretty solid, especially because she just has a battery as well. Having the debuff immunity is also just kind of nice. Like, she is kind of like a skeleton of a kid, right? She's missing a lot, but that's at least there, right? You know, the basic fundamentals of somewhat of a unit is still there. And so I'm like, okay, I could definitely put her in B tier because I could see myself going into a challenge quest bringing Martha more than I would bring Amakusa, because she at least has the power mods and could start like punching up on some of those bosses. Holmes is very weird for me to rank because Holmes I kind of view as like one of the best servants you'll never use. The only people that I see use Sherlock Holmes have been described to me as the esports of FGO because his NP is crazy. He gives everybody Pierce Invul, Pierce defense, 50% crit damage. He's lowering the enemy's defense. He pretty much just says, I don't really care. Go beat them up. Go fold them like an omelet. But you never see this guy get brought, and I think it's because, you know, you're probably just going to bring a Castoria, or a Merlin, or a Koyanskaya, or even if you're plug suiting somebody in, it's going to be an Oberon, maybe a Waver, someone who offers you immediate battery plus, you know, strong buffs. And that's kind of unfortunate, but I'm hoping that as time goes on and we start to get more and more of these annoying bosses, like even on the Bleached Earth, there's this Odysseus fight that just came out where he's got big defense and he's got the permanent invincibility. Someone like Holmes would be really nice for that if he could just kind of auto his NP, which not that hard if you also have Castoria, right? You could just dump the NP gain buff onto Holmes. Everybody will still get the NP gain buff, and if your main DPS has a battery to get their own stuff organized and whatever, you could pop his NP immediately and start getting around that stuff. That's just even like an off the dome idea of like, oh well, there's this annoying fight right now and you could use him for that. But I understand there's just probably better supports that you should be using, and I kind of get it, but I just wish that Holmes would see a little bit more play, because I do think he kind of deserves to be used a little bit more. But I understand our supports are a little too good. They kind of bully people like Holmes out of being used. It's the same thing for like Osaka Behemoth, I feel. Chi Huang is just crazy solo, man. I mean, one of the best solo units in the game. I kind of liken him to the opposite of Ku Alter, where Ku Alter has some defensive ability for soloing, but he clearly puts out a lot of power being a berserker and removing buffs. Chi Huang is the opposite, where he's a more defensively oriented solo unit, especially being a ruler, where he's not really going to be super effective against anybody, but he's going to be extra tanky, right, because he's a ruler. So I love using Chi Huang. And I don't think that's really going to be contested. I mean, when he came out, people were like, this guy is busted. So I don't think I really got to defend Chi Huang very much. Now, see, I probably would have put Samba Ketz down in like C tier, but because these two are here, I think she's at least got to be that good. Like, I don't think she's quite up to here in terms of viability as a DPS type unit, but I don't think she's like barely usable. I think you could get some nice crits out with Samba Ketz. There's some semblance of synergy there where she wants to drop a lot of stars with her buffed star gen rate on her Buster NP, which is possible, right? We have people like Iskandar, Raiko, Emiya as evidence that you can definitely do that. And then she just kind of wants to do fat crits with them, but she's just missing some buffs. I feel like she's, again, like what, a year 3 unit, and I think it's definitely showing at this point. But C+ is more like, if you want to go out of your way to use Samba Ketz, you can get some decent mileage with her. I just don't find, like, it just feels bad when I use her. It just doesn't feel like I'm getting a whole lot of power, especially because we have another ruler on here that I think does the job a little bit better, which might turn some heads, but we'll get to that when we get there. Estrella. So I think Estrella is really good. I don't quite want to put her in EX, but I do want to kind of distinguish how good I think this unit is. Beating up on evil dudes is very, very strong, and I want to reiterate that being an arts unit that floods the field with stars, kind of invalidating the whole need for quick cards, 20, 30, anything like that, is ridiculously insane. When you're using Estrella, you've just got it all. You've got crit power, you're refunding because you're an art servant, you've got a good power mod, your buffs are all just very, very solid, you got everything you need. She's just really good. Estrella will probably continue to age as being just a good single target arts unit, and just in general, I feel, for a good couple of years, especially if they decide to buff her again, which I'm kind of scared to see what they would do with her because she's already very, very strong as is. All right, this is the other AoE I was talking about. Now, I know that people like Game Press and stuff. They have her at like some of the bottom tiers, but I think those people have never actually sat down and used Ruler Artoria in like a challenge quest setting. Because whenever I bring her, she just feels very nice to bring. Being able to not only now just shuffle the cards, but force somebody out of the card rotation is extremely powerful in getting you exactly what you need. And then pairing that with, you also get the NP gain buff and the crit buff. The NP gain is only for the turn, but the crit buff is also for a couple of turns. But the NP gain is very nice because usually, you know, you might be digging for a Brave Chain. You might be digging for follow-up cards after your NP. And so being able to find those is very, very nice. A 40% battery is very good. You can't complain about like, oh, but the attack buff is it's delayed. Everybody likes using Ishtar, right? Everybody acknowledges that she's really good. So let's stop whining and complaining like that's a bad thing for her to have. The fact that she gives herself the Omni card buff, this is not a plus for her currently, but when the anniversary runs around and we're able to easily find Brave Chains with her, and then you could do those Brave Chains following up on the NP with the Mighty Chain system, she'll be very, very good. She'll benefit more off of that. But right now, I mean, I really like using her as a crit ruler. I think she does a very good job at doing that on more of the buster side. Obviously, not as good as Estrella, but I do think she does a very solid job, and she's very good into challenge quests. You can use her for farming if you want. Her NP damage is a little bit low. That's not something I'm really considering too much for her, but I do think she does a really good job at just obliterating guys, especially with crit damage. Himiko, I'm trying to keep people out of EX tier because I feel like there's going to be a lot of people that want to punch up into there, so that's why I kind of made A+, but Himiko was very, very solid. I know that when she came out, some people were like, well, I mean, she does the whole immortal team comp thing that Morgan does, just not as well, but I would take it in the interpretation of, well, Morgan makes an immortal team comp, Himiko makes more of a quote-unquote immortal team comp that's more focused on damage, because Himiko can do some very nasty buster crits. And she's also overcharging her NP by 2 stages instead of Morgan's 1, so you can start gaining access to higher star levels with Merlins, more NP refund on your Koyanskayas, more solemn defense on your Castorias, whoever you want to bring, right? They're just benefiting immensely from that. I don't think I need to speak too much on Himiko, but just, again, the ability to have a 50% battery to access her extremely powerful NP that pretty much does everything for her, as well as having what I would say is one of the better charismas in the game, not only buffing everybody, but also giving everybody the regenerating star buff, I think is very, very strong. Because it means as long as all of your guys are still alive, you're refunding a bunch of stars. Like, who needs 2030? 2030 who? We don't need twice Peaceman around here. We got Himiko, right? Karen. Karen's a little strange. Karen is a little bit weird. I don't exactly know how to rank Karen per se, because I do think Karen is quite good. I do like Karen, but I think I'll get a lot of people saying, well, she doesn't farm super well. And I would agree. Karen barely does farming well enough, right? That's why she has so many batteries on her. She's like stealing NP on this skill, regenerating on that one, have hard battery on this other skill. It's to kind of get her across the finish line for farming. But I do think if you want to bring her to more CQ oriented content where she's got a lot of buffs and debuffs to really help her out in that, I think you see a lot more power in Karen, especially now that she has a strong power mod, which again, I think people are going to rush to try to use her for farming, which she can do, that's fine, but I think you'll see a lot more power when you start bringing her to CQs where you can take advantage of her power mod. But I'm going to leave her in A tier for now. I do like Karen, but maybe I'll bump her down to a B plus later on, because I definitely think she's better than these guys. Especially because these two have my complaint that they do not have like a strong power mod at all. And whereas like you have some strong power mods, but you're missing the rest of a decent kit. You're a little bit weird to rank, but I do like Da Vinci Ruler. I think she's one of the stronger free-to-play units, and people will kind of start to see that in more limited events. Things like Grail Fronts, things like Tower events, where, you know, you can't always bring your insane support casters, you know, to everything, right? Like, and you need some kind of secondary type buffer servant. I think she functions as kind of a weaker Helena, I would say, maybe, where Helena, I think her buffs are a little bit stronger, but Da Vinci's still pretty generic, like 20% battery, Omni card buff, NP damage is all good stuff. I think all that's very, very strong. I wish her NP, you could kind of decide which bullet you wanted to fire, whether it was the red, blue, or green, but I think for a free-to-play support, she's perfectly fine in that aspect. All right, we all know Dantes is pretty good. We all know the lad is really good. I mean, you got to give him some props for being basically the best AoE quick farmer. That might not be the case for long, because he's definitely going to get dethroned by Rikyu later on this year. Even if you think he's #1 still, Rikyu is going to take his position later on. But I think you just have to toss Dante some props for just being as good as he is as a quick looper, and still being decent enough into challenge quests. Like Pierce Invul's good there, NP Steel is really good there. Again, the NP gain buff is still very nice, because even if you're not looping your NP, your follow-up quick cards or your arts card can help you loop your NP back with the NP gain buff. Plus, we got his battery early, and it's like, what, a 50% battery? Ridiculous. Jalter I also think is really good, but no, they gave her the buff. They gave her the NP buff. If she didn't have the NP buff, I might be a little harsher and kind of knock her down a little bit. But Jalter, this is just standard.jpg good unit. I mean, invincibility for survivability, good attack buff. She bombs stars to do massive crits with the highest attack in the game, a solid 50% crit damage buff, huge star weight. I mean, the only problem is what? Her buster buff is only like 1 turn, but hey, the crits are still 3 turns. So even then, you know, even if your NP damage goes down a little bit, your crits are still going to be hitting really, really hard. Like, Jalter's just a very solid DPS unit. I'm still surprised to this day. I'll bring her out places and she'll still perform really well. But I think my bias might be kind of pushing her up a little bit, because, you know, no power mod, no Pierce invincibility, no sure hit even, nothing to really deal with CQs. Maybe I'm surprised she's doing a bit better because she doesn't quite have the kit for it. Let's bump her down just in the sake of keeping my bias in check a lot. Because, look, y'all know I love Morgan, but I also love Jalter. Like, she's #2, but let's keep my bias in check, because she is missing out on like strong power mods and stronger tools for say going into CQs, like no heals, no debuff, cleanse or immunity, no way to protect your buffs from getting removed. Like, just missing out on little pieces that are probably going to be more useful moving forward. So yeah, we'll go ahead and slap her down at Peg. I don't even need to talk about Angraminyu. This boy is not great. Gorgon, I feel the same way as I do about Kets over here, where I think she's got a pretty solid kit in the fact that she's rocking the guts. She's got the monster strength that gives her the 40% attack instead of the usual 20% for charismas, which I do really like. Her crits can be kind of decent, right? Like, she does have the crit buff. And the Petrify can come in handy, as it does not calculate. I don't believe it calculates the same as a debuff. I think that's the difference between stun and Petrify, is that it's a little bit better. But I don't know, it's just something about Gorgon when I use her. It's like, maybe it's the refund, because she does refund the entire party's NP on her own NP, which, I mean, is good, but it's just something about her doesn't really click. She feels a little clunky to use when I bring her to challenge quests and stuff, and I'll try to use her every now and then, because your boy loves Medusa, so you know I love big Medusa, but I don't know. I might need to see like one more thing tossed her way before she gets to like that B plus tier, but being an Avenger definitely helps, as Avengers have a ridiculous class modifier, so she'll always be able to do some pretty good damage. Lobo, I believe your anti-man buff comes with the Doggo event, so you'll be a lot better at the end of this year when we redo the tier list, but right now, just kind of barely usable. I mean, you can get some, I guess, decent enough damage out of him, but bros, what were they thinking when they gave this guy an insta-kill gimmick? I think we've learned that that's not all that great. Salieri, there is something to be said that Salieri can be used as a looper, but I'm not gonna hold it on you guys. I really think Salieri is very overhyped. I mean, the fact that he relies on like defense down for like getting a lot of extra damage. I mean, he has the arts buff and he has the star regen, which I like. He could do some nasty crits, but the fact that, I don't know, the fact you can use him to loop, but that's more speaking to how good Castoria is, not how good Salieri is. And even then, I've caught him lacking a good couple of times, either failing to kill the enemy because we don't have the defense buff, or just failing to loop his NP back. I think Salieri's a bit overhyped. Not complete gutter garbage, but I do think he's a little bit overhyped. But, you know, you can use him if you want. Now, someone who is kind of underpowered, and I feel like this is more of a sentiment of year 4 or year 3 when you came out, because Mount Nobu dropped and she was not super good. Actually, no, you know, no, not B+. No, she's good. No, I'm not taking this anymore. When she dropped, she was like not the best, but I think people were being really harsh on her because they were like, wow, I'm not getting the 70% attack buff on turn 1, and then just cried about it. I'm like, dude, she at least has a functioning kit. And then now they toss her stuff like a battery, a power mod. She can guarantee her burning battlefield. And like the scaling buff is just good going into CQs because her NPs are going to get stronger and stronger, which is good because not only can you stack that now with Koyenskaya, but you can consistently fire your NPs. So she's just getting stronger and stronger. She provides her own stars. I'm tired of this whole like, oh no, she's still bad because when she came out, she was bad. Dude, units get better over time with their buffs. And for some people, like, they're like, oh, we'll acknowledge that Ereshkigal got a lot better with her buff being Earth Power mod because she's really popular. But what is Mount Nobu just not popular enough that people don't acknowledge their buffs? I don't know, man. I mean, dude, she's even really good into Divinity. Like, Divinity, like Divine, that's a good bit of bosses in the game, or just CQs that you'll find, because there's a lot of servants with Divinity. She's a good servant. Like, if Jalter's going to be an A, I can't in good faith keep Mount Nobu out of A. And people will be like, well, what, she's AoE, bro. It's fine. It's fine that, you know, Jalter maybe can clear it with raw damage in 3 turns, and Mount Nobu, maybe it takes her a 4th turn without no power mods because she's an AoE. Bro, boo-hoo, who cares, right? Like, unless you're min-turning, which I don't really care about min-turning, then it's whatever. Space Ishtar, I can't hold her out of EX tier. The fact that you have someone who can change their card type, that just makes her not only one of the better units in the game, but one of the most valuable units in the game. Like, Space Ishtar molds to whatever your box is. You have Castoria, she's going to be really good. You have Koyenskaya, she'll be really good. You have Scotty, not going to be the best quick looper, but she can be very usable. You got to work a little bit, put a little bit of elbow grease, but the quick looping does work. The fact that she can kind of just adapt to your box, I think is supremely powerful. And all of her own buffs are very generic, so she's always really good into whatever you're bringing because she gives herself NP damage, she stacks NP damage, she gives herself all the card buffs if you get lucky with the chances, and then she gives herself attack buff. And she also, like, what, charm immunes the entire party, which is just nice. It's just a nice little thing to have. Plus, the 50% battery will always be greatly appreciated. It's really hard for me to not say that Tyra's also an EX tier. The more and more I use Tyra, the more and more I love her. And guess what? The reason I know Tyra's probably better than I even think is that I don't use her with her Bond CE because none of my friends have the Bond CE, but the Bond CE is just like the Herc 2 Bond CE. It gives her like, what, 2 stackable guts to like build up her second skill even more to get more grudges. So I already have like worse Tyra, and I think she's better than she is. Just being able to NP dodges, she's got guts that are stackable, she's got a Genji power mod, that she has a stackable gimmick, she's just got so much going on. She's got like 100% crit damage. She's just ridiculous, dude. She has too much. They absolutely snapped with this one. I don't know what I need to say about Tyra that's not already been said. Okay, this is definitely going to show where I'm at on the Space Ishtar and Summer Kama propaganda. I like Space Ishtar a little bit more as a unit than I like Summer Kama. Not that I don't think Summer Kama is like an EX tier looper. I just like Space Ishtar as a unit more, and the fact that she's very adaptable. Like, you look at them, if they're both on rate up at the same time, I would tell a newer player to probably go for Space Ishtar, just because, you know, no matter what happens, no matter how the meta molds or unfolds, she'll always be really good. She's very malleable like that. Whereas Summer Kama can be a little bit weird. I really like the idea of being able to put the charm on whatever node you want for wherever you need the most damage. Say like you need Summer Kama to like loop wave 1, and then you could just pop it on wave 2 to just smack them. Maybe there's like the Bleached Earth mission where there's like the Las Vegas where there's like 330k enemies. Maybe you really need it for wave 2, and then someone else will take care of wave 5 or wave 5. Whatever have you can just reapply the charm. I don't know. I like that idea, but you're always going to be saving it for the final wave, I feel, because that's where the most bulky enemies are. And the fact is that her NP damage buff is tied to that skill. I don't really like it because you really want to have that 3-turn NP damage on all 3 nodes, but you don't want to waste it on wave 1. So I don't know. Summer Kama just feels not bad, but a little bit wonky to use sometimes, especially now that I have her over on JP. It's been, I don't know, it's been a little bit awkward using her. It's not like she's bad, and it definitely hurts that I have Summer Ibuki over there because everybody feels really bad compared to Summer Ibuki, but I don't know. I want to give her some props and say that she is good. I do at least like that she also has a secondary gimmick in the, what is it, like the Burning Love, like on attack buff where she, like lowers their deep, or no, she gives herself the purple diamond buff or whatever it's called. She gives herself like that gimmick, which I think is good. I do like that, but just not as much as Space Ishtar. Ranmaru, I'm sorry, man. I've tried so much to try to get Ranmaru to work, and it just, they massacred my boy, and it makes me so sad because I just read her Valentine's. Her Valentine's is so sweet, and I don't want to put her in C tier, but I'm like, dog, she's just not good. Her kit just doesn't function. It's just like, it's like someone built a car and put the tires on the roof and put the doors where the tires go, and you're like, well, technically, maybe it can roll around or something, but I don't really think it's gonna function properly. And that's how I feel about Ranmaru. Ranmaru just feels super unfortunate to me. BB's a very solid free-to-play server, and there's I don't know, what do you want? She has the Jalter crit skill, she can debuff cleanse, she has a little bit of support, she can stun the enemy, right? She can steal their buffs as well. That's all fine and good, and she's a free NP5 if you have the rare mana prisms for it, which that kind of blurs the line of, well, do you consider BB a free-to-play and judge her as a NP5 if you need it, or do you judge her at NP1? I'm still going to judge her at NP5 because I do feel they give out enough rare mana prisms that if you're really frugal with them, you could get your BB up to NP5. That's what I had to do on JP. Still kind of mad that they're not refunding the Santa Altera or the or what it's going to be looking like the BB rare mana prisms because they didn't refund Santa Altera. So that's, I'm a little salty about that, but you know, she'll be free in the future probably with that, but that's not really a knock against BB. That's Lisangle being really goofy, and you know, even DW when they first made the main interludes, charging rare mana prisms is ridiculous. It's not even something you can technically farm, but I guess you can get them if you play events and you know you go on the free-to-plays and you've already got them farmed. It's accessible enough. It's just something you really have to wait for, which is kind of annoying. And in that case, you can also do some really good damage. BB's just solid. She's a very, very good servant. Summer BB, on the other hand, she's going to get a buff that definitely makes her a lot better, but I think she might actually be my first like qualifying for B+, because I do think she's quite a bit better than these two. Her gimmick of locking cards is better than her gimmick of shuffling cards, because you can really trivialize some stages. I mean, there's just setups involving Summer BB because she locks her cards. But her damage isn't the craziest right now. They'll at least help her out when they buff her in a couple of months for her event, for the Grail Front for Seraph. That'll help her out a lot. That'll definitely improve her, especially damage-wise. But she can still crit, and having a 50% battery is still good. I say that makes them more viable than, say, like you as a farmer or you as a farmer. And they at least have got a couple of different buffs going on. Like, they've got NP damage, so some synergy with Oberon, I guess, is better than no synergy, I suppose. Janako, I tried to cope on Janako for a really long time, but you can bring Janako if you want. I don't think she's super great. I think the Charisma is a cool skill. I think you could play around her skill ceiling allies. Yeah, that's about all I'm going to say about that one. That's about all I'm gonna say about that one. I don't really want to talk about Janako. I've tried, man. I tried when she came out. I was like, you could play her on the skill seal. The charisma's not bad. It gives you like 3 different buffs. You know, you're regenerating stars and stuff. Giving the party battery, I think, is really good, but I don't know. It's just not enough. 0.32% NP gain, let's just say, is not it. Summer Kiara, I really like. Yeah, I would like, because I had to think for a second. I'm like, do I really think she's like Art's Mao Nobu? At least like that kind of tier. And I'm like, yeah, I would consider, say, like someone like these two being a bit better than Summer Kiara, because Summer Kiara kind of has the power to go toe-to-toe with them, but she has to build up. You know, she has the whole skill stacking thing, which isn't too bad. Some of the skills you don't really need it for, like the dodge skill. You can kind of just go for it if you need it immediately, but like the battery, you probably do want to go for the 50%. You probably do want to save up though for like lowering their arch resistance and their like defense and stuff to the highest levels. You can do more damage, but I mean, as I don't want to say jank or as wonky as that might feel to use sometimes, she's still good. It's just kind of a learning curve, I would say, of using Summer Kiara. She can be a little bit weird, but you know, once you kind of get into it and you acknowledge the fact that when she first came out, she was glitched, she was broken, Lisengel did not drop this unit correctly, did not code them in the right way. And once you get over your first impressions and retry her out again, she's definitely very strong. Melt, I really like. I like Melt a lot. I'm trying not to be biased and stick her in A+, because I don't want A+ to get too full now, but I do think Melt is a very solid option if you want to bring her. Being able to remove the enemy's buffs, even if you don't do it first like Amakusa, is still good, because it means her follow-up crits will guarantee get through any defense, dodge, invul, as long as they're not unremovable. She's stacking her big old damage. You know, I love that they gave her a ramping skill. They gave her they fixed the NP damage skill quite a while ago. In fact, she's got double dodge plus bombing stars, I think is strong. She does lower her own defense, but I've not really ever found that to come up and really be something substantial. So I just think Melt's a really good servant, right? Just think of her as kind of like alter ego Okita, which technically is a little bit better because you get to use her in more stages, right? She's good against 4 different types. Well, technically like 5, 6 if you include the different extra classes, but you know what I mean? Generally 3 different classes. Lip, on the other hand, I don't think Lip is super great. I think she's a bit off from being more usable. I guess I should probably bump down Kets, and maybe I could bump Lip up to where like Gorgon is at, because Lip's not like bad. Having a taunt and then just good attack and defensive buffs is strong, but she still kind of does negative damage. But I guess she's supposed to be more tanky than everything because she giga heals on her NP, which is super nice. But I don't know, I kind of wish she would do a little bit more damage. I believe they fixed with her most recent buff the whole thing where you could whiff one of her attack buffs that she really needed. I think it's no. It's they added a buff on there and they kept the under 50% one for the masochist skill. But I think they added a secondary buff so she does a little bit more damage to kind of help her out a bit. I still think she probably could use a bit more, but she's not bad, right? Like, and you can play around like stuns and stuff like that. Like you don't. It's like Okita and Frankenstein. I think you could play around people that try to stun themselves, but I don't think she's like quite all that good. But I mean, an alter ego, I do think has some viability, being super effective again against like all cavalry classes. You know, if you don't have somebody like a good rider, a good assassin, a good caster, they might come up and be really good. Dude, the more and more I use Kiara, the more and more I think she's crazy. Do not believe the lies that you need an NP like 3 Kiara to get the job done. I have NP1 Kiara on my NA, I have NP3 Kiara on JP, and they both put in work. It's just the one on JP clears things a little bit faster, but the other Kiara still gets it done. I mean, being able to remove the entire enemy party's debuffs, lower all their defense, suck a charge from all of them, have a 50% battery, smack somebody with an arts down in particular just to say you're gonna get obliterated, have pierce invul and pierce defense caked into your NP with a heal that synergizes with your healing rate received on your 3rd skill, that doesn't stun you like the normal Goddess Metamorphosis skill. It just lowers your HP that you're going to heal back and more, plus giving you a crit buff, an invul buff, just everything. Like, do we think that's good? I think it's pretty good. Like, I think Kiara's kind of nuts. She's also just super effective against rulers for no reason. They were like, slap Nega Saver on there, make her super effective against rulers, call it a day. Ridiculous. Utterly absurd. Liz is kind of hard because my instinct would want me to put her like here, but I do think you can kind of still get some value out of her for like punching things really hard, having the battery and having the big NP damage buff. But I think just having some slim margins of use every now and then is probably C plus, not B plus, where the margin for, say, using Martha, I guess, is larger because she has 3 power mods that you would use her for, whereas Liz is just like kind of good generic damage. I really like Okita Alter. I have been using her more. This might be more of like a B plus tier unit. When I did my review for her, I think it was earlier this year, kind of re-going over what my thoughts were on her. She's definitely one of these servants I've kind of seen with the largest glow up, because unironically, she's just kind of been slowly going up the tiers in my eyes. I mean, just like C, then, you know, kind of going to C plus, B, B plus. They just keep tossing her buffs, and she just kind of keeps getting better. And they almost seem to be listening to like what people have a problem with. People didn't like that she had 1 dodge, they gave her 2. They gave her extra offensive buffs, power mods. I mean, they're giving her all these really good things. I mean, she has a 30% battery, which makes her viable for buster farming if you want to use her, and she's not bad for that, right? Like, she can do some pretty decent damage, and she covers 4 types, so if you don't have a strong AoE caster, you can use her to take out assassins and whatnot. I like what they did with Okita Alter. Plus, going into challenge quests, she lowers the enemy's quick and buster resistances and whatnot. So her follow-up quick and buster crits, if you're doing those, which you should be, right? If you're in a challenge quest, they're gonna bite even more. Like, I really like what they've done with Okita Alter, and I think she's slowly becoming a better and better unit. Unlike someone like Sitanai, who I kind of view as not really super useful. Now, last year I was like, Sitanai's not all that bad. I've been using her more and more this year. Yeah, I'm starting to understand why she got that nickname, the other name that people would give Sitanai. I'm kind of understanding why they gave that to her. I think I coped hard enough trying to say that she was a bit better than I thought she was, because I was like, oh, she, you know, lowers the dragon guy's NP charge. That's not terrible. There's some dragon enemies in the game, but just make it a power mod. Just do what you did for for Masashi, and just make it a power mod instead of it just being like, oh, I seal saber NPs. They give it a power mod, right? Like, just do that for Sitanai. Call it a day. Make those 3rd skill buffs more guaranteed, because I mean, she's got like a decent enough kit, like the invul, the attack buff, the star refund, like a solid arts buff. I think she has the grounds for a good kit, but I just think our other extra class units are way better. I think if we were maybe doing an alter ego only list, maybe she would be B tier among them, but against all other extra class units, I don't think she's there. King Protea, I'm going to kind of put more in this middle tier, because I think King Protea is harder to gauge, because she's pretty much specifically going to be used in CQ content, right? Like, you're not really going to bring her to farm stuff, I wouldn't think, because her whole gimmick is get really big, start resisting NP damage, get a ton of max HP, kind of play like Bargus, but a little bit better, because she actually resists the NP damage and might be able to tank them. And then if you want, you can cash in your growth stacks for big damage and you know, extra battery and whatnot, which I think is kind of cool. It's just not really for me. Every time I kind of play with King Protea, it just, I don't know. You guys know me from the Berserker video. I like to go full ape mode and just slam into people. And so this very slow, methodical style of gameplay, I don't really like. But just because it's not for me, I can acknowledge that it is at least somewhat decent. Doman's nuts, bro. Like, Doman is really crazy. Not like he uses got a loop. God forbid you bring him to a challenge quest and you bring evil people with him. They're starting to do like 100% crits. They're getting fat attack buffs. He's doing fat damage. We're throwing curses everywhere. If you want, you could bring her for the take advantage of the curses. You could give him the curse E that we just got on JP. Oh, and that comes out, so he gets a power mod on top of that. Doman's just a good servant. He's just going to start aging very, very well. He's just really strong. Abigail, I think Abigail kind of sucks at this point, dog. I think it mainly comes from her struggle to really loop her NP. Look, they can give her a battery plus the NP refund every single turn. They can do as much as they want with that. Like, low damage plus not really refunding our NP very well for whatever damage we are getting. I don't think she's super good. I don't really like Abigail. As opposed to Hokusai. Hokusai I do like. They gave her a manpower. Well, she technically launched with a manpower mod. Having a gimmick for CQs, and that, like, the more she attacks, the lower the enemy's defense gets. While also having a dodge plus a battery can be very good, but it can also make her really good in arts farming, right? Where if you happen to find some of her arts cards, you can, you know, slap an enemy. It does rely on a little bit of RNG, but you can boost her damage a little bit. But if you're not really fighting man attribute people, I wouldn't advise using her for farming, which is why she's a little bit lower, but she's decent enough. Like, Hokusai was one of those units that I think was on like C tier or C plus for me that has kind of started to work her way up because I've used her a little bit more and she's warmed up to me a little bit. I still think XX is really crazy and I think she's super undervalued as a unit. She just does damage, man. God forbid you are a threat against humanity, which is like every boss in the game, right? Every end boss. God forbid you're one of those guys. You are getting thrown into the stratosphere. Helps that she's also got a decent battery, invul, and pierce invul for, you know, varying situations, plus a solid attack buff, and she can bomb some stars. Like, she's just a good servant. I just like MHXX. You just throw her at a problem and they get deleted. Yang, I kind of feel the same way. I can't really put Yang any lower. The more and more I play with Yang on JP, the more and more I really wish I had her on NA. I think it's so much fun because I wasn't using her with, and this is going to sound crazy, I wasn't using her with Honey Lake over on JP because I didn't know I had it. Started playing with Honey Lake, and let me tell you, man, you get that free power mod with the burn, plus you can just stack burn as much as you want, and you've already got the burn power mod. You're kind of just going sicko mode. You're kind of just crazy. Plus, her other, like, aside from just doing big damage and, like, doing pretty good damage over time, the fact that she's got a taunt plus the invul is super, super nice. It can keep your supports nice and safe, because I don't like my Castorias or Proto-Merlins getting bullied over there, right? I don't want them getting beat up by stray Berserker attacks or something like that. And so Yang is perfect for just absorbing all of the punishment, right? Absolutely love using Yang. I wish I had her on NA, because so nice of a servant. If Dante's is going to be up in A+, I guess Voyager has to be up there as well, huh? Because they did give him his buff. What, did he get his buff before the year? You know, I got to double check this real quick. Hold on, I will be right back. Let me double check this. Okay, I knew I wasn't a crazy person. He gets his buff, the first one for the 3rd skill during Anniversary, and then he gets the NP buff during Wangina's event. I knew I wasn't crazy because I was like, yeah, I guess I do kind of have to put him up there with Dante's if they're that high. But I was like, wait, no, we haven't gotten any of his buffs yet. He's still kind of mid, I'll be honest. His damage is kind of not the best right now. I mean, you could still bring him to CQs using like the Living Human buff, I think. Like refunding their NP on his own NP, I think is very nice. But aside from that, I think he's a little subpar, but not the worst servant I've ever seen. Because again, he can crit, he can protect against, you know, crit damage for the party. He has a big battery, which also has to account for something. I mean, big batteries are big batteries. Although I say that, and then we have Summer Abigail, who has a big battery. That's about it. There's not much else I can say. The sleep mechanic was a very interesting debuff, I cannot lie. Kind of neat that they were going to introduce that. And then, not very good, turns out. You know, a 2-turn stun sounds great on paper, but you can't attack them again. It's FGO. I'm trying to beat my enemies. How am I supposed to win if I'm not able to hit them? I mean, it would be nice if you had like a standby action where you could choose to not attack that turn. That I think would make stuff like sleep more viable in CQs. Like you could make like a sleep team or something in the future, but you have to attack. So if you're bringing her to a CQ and there's only one enemy, it's worthless, right? It's completely terrible. I mean, her damage can be really good with all the debuffs, but like that's not super special, especially because that's relegated to CQs where enemies have higher debuff resistance or debuff immunity. And then God forbid you want to use her as a farmer. I mean, technically you could use her. I just would not advise it. Bring Spartacus instead, for the love of all things that are good. Okay, I am also noticing the time here, so I'm going to try to go through these next ones pretty quickly. All right, Van Gogh, I think, is absolutely nuts. Van Gogh giving like 100% to all foreigners, and then just a big crit damage, very, very strong, playing around with the curse damage, exchanging the stacks for, you know, attack buffs, quick damage buffs, like debuffing the enemy. All that stuff is very, very good. NP is like still one of the most broken NPs in the game. Idle Altar, not very good. Being anti-machine, not very much needed in today's current meta. I don't know if that will ever be needed. They fumbled the bag really heavily on this one. I thought it was going to be a very solid, quick looping, free-to-play servant that did not age out very well, so not super great. Jacques de Molay is very, very solid, very strong. I'm starting to think this should just be A tier and this should be B tier, but I don't want to have Melton B tier. So very, very strong. Again, whole thing with the like being able to apply your own power mod on anybody is always very good. Split battery is very good, especially on quick units, since they do tend to struggle a lot more than, say, arts units. So being able to split your battery for when you need it, so you don't have to waste a 50% battery, you can then just waste the 20% on wave 2 and then maybe the 30% on wave 3 is always going to be very, very strong. Koyan Dark, I think as of right now, still a very, very strong unit. Very, very good. Do not let Kukulkan coming out tell you that this is a bad unit. I think she is good. I think she is very strong. Earth is a very strong power mod. Applying all the debuffs is just going to be something that ages very well. It already means that she can use something like Honey Lake if you wanted to. If you wanted to give her a power mod, she could just use Honey Lake because she burns everybody. Super, super nice. Also buffing essentially the, like, what, the animal servants, right? I think is just kind of a neat little gimmick, but mostly probably just going to apply to herself. But hey, if you're using the Koyan Skya team, everybody's just circle jerking each other in that team setup. And then Oberon literally just changed how we play the game. Literally just nukes everything. Very, very good servant. All right. I saw that we were getting up to 45 minutes and I was like, okay, I do not want to be here for an hour. I do not want to be continuing talking. Let me just lightning around the rest of these guys. But as per usual, I will leave this in the description and I will also put this as the pinned comment so that you can go ahead and make your own tier list if you would like to, and then come into the Discord or whatever and be like, hey, ZTL, numbnuts, you're stupid, you're dumb, here's my list, whatever have you. If you want to make different tiers, if you want to make E tier, if you want to make C- tier, have at you. You know, do whatever you want. It's your tier list, is my tier list. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have a nice day. Peace. Late, guys. Whew.